Welcome back, guys, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking a little time to spend a little time with me, as you can see here on the screen, playing some Battlefield 4. I still play this game, man, and still enjoy this game. And like I said, man, I'm going to try to create a little more diversity here on the channel, so you can expect to see, games like this and, other games alike. Just more content on the channel. Like I said, give you guys something more to look at. And you're going to see I'm going to go on somewhat of a negative streak here. I'm going to get killed consecutively, back to back here for a little while, but then I'm going to get into my stride. But anyway, guys, what I want to talk about here, in the commentary, just something a little different conversation, if you will. I want to talk about the lack of commitment by gamers. That definitely happens with shooters. You see it a lot with shooters. And I don't know, is it because of, the day and age that we live in? We always want more. It's more of like a microwave type of mentality. We want it quick and we want the next thing. It's like we don't always spend time or put in the dedication with a product. You see it all the time, man, with shooters. And, the thing about it with shooters is so many of them that come out, by the time you play one for a little while and then the next one comes out, it's like you almost don't go back to the original game that you liked before. And that's just a question I want to pose to you guys, here that are viewing the video. Just a quick question, what is it that causes us to do that? What is your reason for not going back or sticking with a particular shooter? Me personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't buy every shooter. I may get an opportunity to play it, I may red box it, whatever the case may be. But once I find a shooter that I like, I stick with it. And Battlefield 4 was just my game of choice. You guys know it's one of those preference games that I have, as far as shooters. So I stuck with Battlefield. I got the premium or what have you. And I'm going to talk about that as well in another video. It may come out today or maybe tomorrow, what have you. I'm going to talk about, premium and, if it's worth it for certain products, such as Battlefield Hardline. I will explain to you why I chose not to get the premium, package for that. And like I said, I'll go into that a little bit later in another video. But, it's like a lack of a commitment. And what I, really want to get at in this video is the fact that there's so many maps, now with having premium. And that's funny, I'm kind of thinking of this topic on the fly. Having premium in this game, it kind of hurts it to some degree. Because, it's so many maps and, right now the maps don't rotate all in one, which I don't know why that was ever taken out of the game. I wish it was where the maps would just, you just play, and if you have the new maps, it just rolls over. You don't have to pick and choose what map pack you want to play on. But anyway, to get back to that point, it seems like now, because there's not as many people playing this game, it takes a long time for you really to find a nice server. I find myself now having to go into the server search in order to get a decent game. If I just jump right into a particular map pack or what have you and try to play, numerous times when the game starts, I'm the only one there. I'm the only one there, and that is just crazy. And again, that goes back to the commitment. People don't stay committed to one game, and I'm not saying you should. I'm just, merely asking the question, why is that? We bounce around a lot, and like I said, man, for the most part, shooters are shooters. Now, yes, I do play Star Wars Battlefront. That's a different type of shooter, if you will. That's kind of like a Halo type of effect. More, futuristic and more fictional based. More fun game. Like that. Versus a game like Battlefield. This is a game I play that, gives me more of a realistic feel. Obviously, it's not totally realistic, but, this is just a game that gives me more of a realistic feel, style of game, versus, other games like Call of Duty. That's just, just my opinion. I prefer to stick with this type of shooter when you compare those two. But like I said, other than that, it's hard for me to rotate a lot of shooters. Because of one, I'm not going to have time to play them all and continue to play them all. So So I'm just wondering why, more people don't do that. Why don't they stick to a particular game? I will say shout outs to those guys who have played Destiny. I still know people who have stuck with that game still. And that's what I'm saying. To me, that's kind of the path I follow. When I find a game that I appreciate and I like, I just play that and have fun with it. I definitely like Battlefield 4, but it's hard to play it to the degree that I want to play it on because, I can't even get enjoyment out of all of the maps because there's not enough people playing it at the times that I'm playing the game. So it's almost like a catch-22, but yeah, definitely sound off in the comments, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Why do you think people do that? Which way do you prefer? And sorry for that noise in the background, guys. Take care of that. But yeah, let me know. Let me know, guys. Definitely let me know what you think. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments, and I promise it won't hurt you to hit that like button. All right, guys, until next time, let me know what you think. Peace. Once again, guys, thanks for coming by. And if you want to interact with me live, head on over to Sim Standard Radio every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, along with Smitty and Azure Effect. The call-in number for the show is down in the description. Now, of course, for more content, go ahead and click the link above. And before you go, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. All right, guys. Until next time, lights out.